guys, how's it going? So I have two goals for today. Number one is to plant wheat, and number two is to dehydrate some apples. I picked up a box the last time we were at the produce stand picking up pumpkins. They're sitting outside our back door and I really want to get those going. We're out here in the cut flower garden. It's a beautiful, beautiful morning, and we've got the area all prepped and ready to go for our wheat. This is where I planted potatoes this past season. We've had nothing in the area since we harvested those because it really hasn't been too long. But what we did is we took the tractor through and just tilled up a spot the width of the tiller, which I can't remember exactly how many inches that tiller is, but it was wide enough for me to fit 4 rows of potatoes really close together, like 18-inch spacing. And I thought, oh, I don't know if this is going to work out. Like, I don't know if all the plants are going to get proper light and airflow, but we harvested so many potatoes from this area. So that's probably how I'm going to do it from now on, because it's such an efficient use of space. So I thought, well, this would be a perfect area to plant a really wide row of wheat. And this is my first time growing wheat in my own garden, so I'm very excited to learn a lot in this process. I think just like everything else, the more you grow it, the more you learn, the more you kind of figure out for your area what works for you, how to irrigate it, and all those sorts of things. And I have very basic knowledge of wheat because it is something that my parents have sold down at the garden center forever. In fact, they sold that seed along with other things, you know, alfalfa, clover, lots of grass mixes, dryland grass mixes, things like that. They sold those types of seeds far before the garden center ever even started. Here is our seed right here. It's a variety called Ovation. I've got far more than I actually need to seed this area, but we'll just store it and use whatever we have left over next year. Before we go plant, I wanted to run over a few details about the specific variety of wheat as well as just some wheat basics. This is going to be very basic because, like I said, this is the first time I'm growing it in my own garden, and I'm sure some of you could probably fill us in much more detail, those of you who have grown it in a larger scale or have been growing it for a lot of years. But I think it's just a really interesting process. So this seed, the first thing you probably noticed about it, oh, let me see if I can get it close. This is a weird angle. It's pink because it has been treated with the fungicide. And I don't think there's any farmer in our area that plants wheat without this treat on it, because what it helps with is in unfavorable conditions, when the soil isn't perfect, or, you know, you don't know about moisture levels throughout the winter and all of that stuff. It helps the seed not rot. It also helps avoid damp off once the seed is germinated. So that's why it is pink. Ovation is a non-GMO wheat seed. In fact, my parents' garden center doesn't deal in any GMOs whatsoever. So it is a hybrid though. It has been bred to, there's a few things. Let me see if I can remember them all. Most of these things won't actually matter for the reasons why I'm growing wheat. So the reason I'm growing wheat out in our cut flower garden is that my mom and I typically go out into the fields, like the farmers' fields after they harvest, middle of summer. There's usually like a little strip along the edge of the lane that their tractors can't get, and they allow us to go in and cut that wheat, which is awesome and great. But I thought, you know, it would be a really fun thing to just grow it ourselves, just to have this area out here going, and we can just pop out into our own garden and cut that wheat. So I'm growing this for my mom and for myself, and you know, for all the projects we like to do in the fall, more decorative purposes. But I think that growing this and learning how to do it and honing the process is a good skill to learn, because you never know, one day I might need to know how to grow wheat, and it'd be awesome if I knew it. So this variety is a winter wheat. There are two different types, winter wheat and spring wheat. Winter wheat you plant in the fall and typically harvest late spring or summer, depending on your area. For us, that's usually right in the middle of the summer. And then there's spring wheat that you plant in the spring and harvest in the fall. The beauty of planting this stuff right now is that, I mean, there's pros and cons, I think, to each way, but it's in the ground, it's going for you. It's an early crop, and sometimes you can, I know a lot of farmers plant again after they harvest this. So it kind of allows that flexibility, and it's a little less work to get it up and going, because typically in the fall we get a little bit more moisture. Right now we're kind of a lot warmer than usual. We haven't seen much rain yet. So I do have irrigation set up to our system to where I can give it a little bit of moisture just to get it up and growing. In fact, we'll probably see green. It'll look like a lawn right now in the fall. And then in the spring, once we start getting enough heat units, it'll start to grow faster. And that's when it'll put on the bulk of its growth. Ovation is a soft white winter wheat. So there's also soft wheat and hard wheat. Soft wheat, I believe, is higher in protein, lower in gluten, and hard wheat is higher in gluten. It has much more elasticity for your dough. It holds a shape, like your bread holds a shape a lot better with flour made from hard wheat. There's probably a lot more detail in that area, but this is a soft white winter wheat. Ovation is also a variety that has onlets, or it's bearded. It's known by several different names, but maybe we can toss up on the screen what the difference between a bearded wheat is and a beardless wheat. Again, there are pros and cons to each. I'm growing the bearded wheat because decoratively it's very pretty. It's got a lot of architecture, but the beard, or the on that the wheat produces, is kind of like this long spiky thing that comes out from the end of the seed, and it's a protective covering for the seed. And if you have high deer pressure in your area, the deer do not like it because it's like a porcupine. It's like a self-defense mechanism that keeps the deer from munching down your crop. If you planted beardless, it's nice and soft and the deer love it. If you're planting it for forage though and for grazing, beardless is probably your better option, because those awns sometimes can get stuck in the throat of your animals and things like that. And in the process of cleaning the wheat that has beards, all of those awns are removed. So anyway, there's a couple of things to consider there. Another couple of things about this variety: it is resistant to several things that wheat is prone to, I guess, rust being one, and a soil-borne mosaic virus, so it's highly resistant to that. It's got good straw strength, if that's something that you're considering. It doesn't matter for, you know, the reasons or the purposes I'm growing it for. It's a medium height. And then I did write down, I've got how much it can yield per acre, because I think that's an interesting piece of information, but I would never remember all the numbers. So this variety, it's said to have a very consistent high yield in the Pacific Northwest. Again, it might be different in your area, and there's a lot of different varieties of wheat. So in dryland areas where it's not getting consistent irrigation, the yields can be between 80 and 120 bushels per acre, and a bushel equals 60 pounds. So that means between 4,800 and 7,200 pounds per acre in dryland. Now in irrigated fields, it can be as high as 165 bushels per acre, which at 60 pounds per bushel, that makes it 9,900 pounds. So I'm excited to see what this does in our garden. If we have really good luck, depending on how much we actually utilize in the projects, we might have a little bit left over to harvest and maybe grind and see what we can get from that. Maybe it'll mean next year we plant 2 big wide rows so that we can harvest more for, you know, eating purposes. But our row this year is roughly between 4 and 5 feet wide and 60 feet long, and I'm going to be intensively planting it. Now, the spacing, I'm seeing anywhere from space at 3 inches apart to 8 inches apart. Some people have even planted it closer than that. I think the 3-inch spacing is probably where I'm going to land. Maybe a little bit wider than that, because I want the plants to have enough room to produce and have enough air and light and all of that stuff so that they're really productive plants. Seed planting depth is another area you'll find a lot of different answers or opinions about, but I think it does depend on your area, how much rainfall you're depending on, how much irrigation you have, if it's consistent or not. You know, if you are in an area where you're depending on rainfall or inconsistent water, and if the rainfall is not super abundant, you might want to plant your seed a little bit deeper, because it lowers that seed in the soil surface where there is naturally more moisture for that seed to utilize. Of course, it'll take longer for it to germinate, and you might lose some possibly in the process, so you might want to seed a little bit heavier in that case. 1.5 inches is what I'm shooting for. Did I already say that? I think 1 to 1.5 inches is where we're going to land, because we can provide consistent irrigation, but I still want the seed to be protected, especially during the germination process. If we're only dealing with a 1/2 inch of soil over it, then it's just going to dry out a lot quicker. And for us, where we don't get consistent rainfall, it's going to require us irrigating it, and we sometimes have dry winters. I think having it a little lower is going to be more beneficial to the seed. All right, so now I want to get to planting. I just wanted to share a little bit of information, the little bit of information I do know. I am going to take my time planting this wheat seed because I'm only doing 1 row and not a whole field of it. I really want to be mindful about spacing. I don't want to have to come out here and thin. I don't want it to be too far apart but not too close together. You know the drill. So this is all I'm using today. My kneeling pad right here, and the seed. I do have a rake, but I don't think I'm going to use that because we've got the drip tape already placed. That's the other thing. We did run new rows of drip tape, and we ran far more than we had for the potatoes because I wanted them to be very close together for at least the germination process. I have a feeling we're going to be turning off every other tape this next year, but we typically replace the drip tape every year. It's a fairly inexpensive, it's an inexpensive way to water out here, way cheaper than doing like the brown drip tubing, and our stuff just gets so plugged up with hard water that we find replacing it is better than trying to limp a crop through. And because this crop it's technically for next year, we went ahead and ran the drip tape now. So we've got 6 rows of drip tape in here. I am going to run and grab 6 bricks. I like to pull the tape and weigh it down at the end with a brick. That typically helps keep them from moving so much. I think the best way is to probably bury your drip tape. I think that's how most people use drip tape. I think that's the proper way, is to put underneath the soil. I mean, you don't lose any soil to evaporation. We lose very little, I think, because it's right there at the soil level. But I do think that's probably the preferred way of using drip tape. But I'm still so new to it. Even after using it for a couple of years out here in the cut flower garden, I'm still a little bit nervous about it because of how much hard water and some of the issues that we've had, like coverage issues. I like to be able to see what's going on. So I think I need another year or two before I'm confident enough to bury it. And you wouldn't be burying it very far. I mean, you'd be going underneath, and look at that difference between compost and our native soil. You would just be burying it a little bit, you know, to where it's not showing. It would look nicer too. But we did put land and sea compost in here. I don't know if I already said that, and Biotone starter fertilizer. So I mean, the soil has been reconditioned after the potato crop. We did not till it or anything, just kind of smoothed it out a bit. So what I'm thinking is that we will probably, in the end, turn off half of these drip tapes next year once the wheat is up and going, because the water does sub out. But when it's germinating, you really do need like less water more often. So if you've got this many drip tapes out, then I won't have to come out here with a hose and wet down this whole area all the time to get the wheat going. Okay, I'm gonna grab a handful of wheat just to show you how I think I'm gonna go about this. And then we're gonna tackle the whole row. I wonder if I should do like I don't know, you guys. I think spacing it out exact will be kind of hard. So I'm just gonna lightly sprinkle it over this area, and we'll see what happens. I think I'll get a better feel for it here pretty quick. And then what I'm gonna do is just come in and kind of turn the seed under the soil surface about 1 inch. That's it. All right, guys, let's get this done. All right, guys, I don't know if you can see the seeds scattered out on the top of the soil surface. I just went ahead and did the broadcast with my hands, just because I felt like the coverage was going to be just about the same as if I, went little area by little area. And you can see that I probably could space them a little bit further apart from one another. But in this case, since this is a first year experiment, I would rather put a few too many seeds in the ground than not enough. And it's quite possible that I should be doing exactly the opposite and putting fewer seeds in. But either way, we're here now. The seeds are scattered. I'm going to turn the soil over to get them underneath the soil surface about 1 inch, 1.5 inches or so, and then we're gonna water them all in. I did weigh down the ends with bricks, and I came through real quick and I repositioned some of these because they weren't spaced exactly apart. And if we go in and turn some off, so what I think we'll end up doing is maybe turning off this outer one, this one right here, and then that one right there, and just leaving 3 running next year. So they need to be spaced pretty close to even. Anyway, it's looking good. right, guys, it's all done. Wheat is in the ground. Now, as I was planting the wheat seeds, I could hear all the birds in the sunflowers nearby. There are always a bunch of birds in this area, like on the berries, on the corn, on the sunflowers. And I just thought, oh, okay, well, I just gave them a nice snack over here. So I did decide to come back through with more compost, and I put another layer on top. That's another benefit of planting your seeds a little bit lower, is that they're safe from birds eating on them, or safer. Now, the reason why I went over mine with compost, even though I turned them under the soil, is that not 100% of the seeds made it under the soil. And I think that's one benefit of seeding a little bit heavier when you're kind of going about it the way I am, and I'm not using a tool or a specific machine to plant the wheat like they do out in the fields. So I just didn't want to give the birds the idea that the stuff was there. So I hope this works. It did tidy it up and made it look really nice, added more nutrients in the soil, which is never a bad thing. So we should be good to go, I think. So hopefully in not too long, I'll be able to show you a progress update on how this is going, because we should see it break the soil surface this fall yet, because we're still pretty warm. 10-day is all highs in the upper 70s and lows in the mid 40s. So it's pretty favorable conditions. I mean, it is getting cooler at night, and then, you know, it takes a long time for it to warm up into the high 70s during the day. But like right now we're midday. It's pretty darn warm. Like, I worked up a pretty good sweat. Okay, now that that is done, we're gonna head back toward the house, and I'm gonna set up a table outside, I think, just to cut up some apples and get them all prepped and ready to go into the dehydrator. Got it loaded up. I was able to fit 16 apples in this dehydrator. This is a Sedona, or Tribest Sedona Express. I bought it because I like the see-through door. I can see what's going on all the time. And there's 11, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 11 trays in there. That's quite a lot. All right, guys, I'm back outside because the lighting is just so much better out here. But as far as the dehydrators go, I used to use, and I still have them, those plastic white round ones. They've got, I think, 4 stacks that you can put things on, and they're fairly inexpensive. So I started with one, I added the second, and then I finally, I think it was last year I bought this dehydrator, maybe it was the year before. I just needed something that had a larger capacity where I could put more things in, because dried apples in particular, that's what I dry the most, they just disappear in our house. Like, I cannot keep on top of the snacking of them, which is awesome in one way because it's better than snacking on potato chips, which we also like. So it's a much healthier alternative, but I feel like I can just not dehydrate enough of them to make it through any good part of the winter anyway. They just last, you know, like a day or two in our house, each batch. But it sure makes it nice to have that twist, apple peeler and corer and slicer. It does all 3 at the same time. I couldn't get it tight enough on our counter, and I didn't want to go get a tool for it because I knew it was going to be a pretty quick job. But if you clamp that down really tight, you can just speed through the apples really quickly. It's really not a huge mess to make the dried apples, so I really don't have a good excuse. I should probably be making more. Anyway, that is it for today. Just wanted to show you kind of my foray into wheat growing. We will see how it goes. I'm very hopeful, I'm very excited about it, and I told everybody to watch for birds. Let's watch for birds. If we have to, we'll put a piece of that just really light harvest cloth over the top just until they start to germinate, and that way the birds can't get to them. Other than that, I will give you updates as soon as I see some action out there. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next one. Bye. All right, guys, just a little PS. I wanted to show you how much that one batch of apples yields. Look at that, almost a whole gallon bag. Well, we ate a bunch of we ate a bunch of them last night as they were coming out, but they turned out beautiful. I'm so excited about it. So now I'm going to start batch number 2.